Depending on whom you talk to, Elon Musk's idea of transporting people inside tiny capsules travelling at high speed through Hyperloop tubes of partially evacuated air using renewable power at high speed is either doomed to failure, an engineering impossibility, or an absolute genius move that will transform the way we travel and get rid of short-haul air forever. In a similar vein, attitudes towards the Boring Company, the tunnel boring and building company that Musk hopes will transform our cities by building on massive underground transportation networks powered by clean renewable energy, are similarly varied. Supporters say the Boring Company will transition the world's megacities away from surface transportation, while critics cite the legislative, engineering and massive financial challenges of building huge numbers of tunnels across major cities. Musk's idea for Hyperloop, as defined in his Hyperloop Alpha paper, is now being refined and developed by several commercial companies and many academic institutions, and the Boring Company is pushing ahead with its plan for expanding its test tunnel in Los Angeles, while simultaneously negotiating new tunnel routes across the US and around the world. But while the original idea of the Boring Company tunnels was somewhere between a Hyperloop and a traditional metro system, with both privately owned vehicles and specially designed passenger pods travelling around the underground network at high speed, Musk has announced via Twitter that the Boring Company is now switching its focus towards foot passengers, i.e. passenger pods, over private car owners, stating that all tunnels and Hyperloop would prioritise pedestrians and cyclists over cars. And it makes complete sense. Here's why. First up, while the Boring Company's initial vision of offering private car owners a clean, convenient way to get themselves and their cars across town without having to sit in traffic jams at surface level, it was both a business challenge and a cure rather than a prevention to the problem of heavily congested cities. On paper, the engineering isn't so bad. You drive up to a specialised parking bay, which has a dedicated car-carrying cradle atop a heavy-duty lift. The lift then lowers the cradle to the tunnels below, and then the cradle whisks you and your car off to wherever you want to go, powered by renewable electricity, and that avoids the queues on the street above. But in order to be cost-effective and affordable for all, the Boring Company would have to build a network to an enormous level, where economies of scale made travel via tunnel cheaper than sitting in traffic for an hour. And then there's a case for getting all those cars up and down into the tunnels. You'd need to build a couple of lifts every single block to ensure the kind of throughput you'd need to get cars from point A to point B in reasonable time. Without that, you'd just end up with massive queues at every lift. But the bigger issue? Congestion. The issue with our cities isn't that our roads are too small, it's that there are too many cars carrying one person. And as the iconic 1991 photo commissioned by Munster's planning department shows, the physical space needed to transport a group of people by car, bus or bicycle is very different. Here's a video recreating that photo from Reykjavik, Iceland, and photos like it are still being taken around the world today. If we really want to change the way our cities work, we don't need to get cars underground. We need to get rid of cars completely. Clarifying his announcement, Musk has said that while the Boring Company will still transport cars, it will only do so after personalised mass transit needs have been met, adding that it's a matter of courtesy and fairness. If someone can't afford a car, they should go first. And that's a commendable move and should certainly help ensure people can travel more easily across cities without needing a car. And since, rather than have subway-style stations, Musk's Boring Company vision is to have a far higher number of small footprint stations around a city, it should be more appealing than today's underground metro systems. These stations, no larger than a parking space, would transport people down into the tunnels in specially designed pods, which look about the same size as a minivan and very similar to the weird-looking e-pallet that Toyota showcased at CES earlier this year. This should not only mean that there's less waiting time to travel, but could mean that people get to their destinations faster, as the pods will be able to drop them off closer to their destination. But, and this is a big but, there are still some issues with this concept. For a start, unlike personalised autonomous air taxis, pods would have to travel along a set route of some description. And I'm guessing in order to keep the costs low, passengers on the Boring Company network would have to share the pods. Or we're back to needing massive numbers of pods and massive numbers of lifts to minimise transit delays. And that would mean that people wouldn't necessarily get straight to their destination. Instead, they may have to make several stops along the way or get multiple pods. At least, that's my understanding of it. It's still faster than current underground since the pods can have some independent movement on the underground tracks. But unless we can reduce the number of personal vehicles on the road or make pods so cheap that everyone wants to use them rather than cars, I think we're still going to have transit problems. What do you think? That's it. Thanks for joining me. See you next time.